Welcome to the October meeting of the Developmental Disabilities Committee. I'm sorry for the sound issue. My name is Sherry Takamoto. I'm a parent and co-chair of this committee, and I'll introduce my other co-chair. Bertra.
Bertram McGann, co-chair, member of the CSB.
Lynn.
Lynn Cosma, parent and member of the committee.
LaVoice Reed, staff.
Not staff, parent and member of the DD committee.
Yeah, we're gonna hire her someday.
Laura Elrock, parent.
Moira Salcedo, parent.
Marriage is caregiving.
Joe Albert, CSB committee, member of the CSB committee and member of the GD committee. Thank you.
Good evening, my Moonabah Duncanville staff.
Jim Baker, staff. Tom Daly, staff.
Thank you. So that's who's in the room here at 12 South Irving Street. And then now I'd like to introduce the participants who are here virtually. So first we're going to start with David. Goliher.
My name is David Dollaher. I'm a parent.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Eleanor. Eleanor Hodges.
Oh, hi, I'm Eleanor Hodges. I'm a guest and a parent of an adult with Down syndrome.
Wonderful. Welcome. Ivory. Ivory Brooks.
Ivory Brooks, Program Director, Millwood, Arlington's Day Program.
Well, thank you. Terrell.
Terrell Jones, Clinical Director with CRI.
Thank you. Lucia.
Lucia Claster, parent and non-voting member of the committee.
Marjo.
Margot Greenway, I'm the Executive Director of our Stomping Ground.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And Pat.
Hi, I'm Pat Vincent with Job Discovery.
Thank you. And Amanda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Smedley, and I'm the Director of Service Source Day Programs.
Wonderful. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
So
Can you turn
late.
your laptop around? I think you should.
next on the agenda is comments.
Hey,
Is there
Sherry.
any-
This
Yes.
is Kay Tiernan. I'm late.
Oh, hi, Kate.
I was on and
And
off,
Joe.
parent and non-voting member. Well, hello.
And Joe also joined since your introductions. Joe Clem.
Joe Clem. Joe.
Hi, everybody. This is Joe Clem, new member of the committee, but I'm a member of the CSB for the past few years.
Thank you. So next on the agenda,
Developmental.
is there anyone else who who has not identified themselves? Okay. Next on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone who has any public comment? And I don't have an agenda.
I don't either.
You know, I can pull mine up.
Do you need a, you can take mine. I don't
Thank you. I'm sorry.
I thought everything was on my apology. They were.
So is there anyone who has public comments? Okay, next on the agenda is approval of the July 2023 minute.
It's actually September.
Oh, so I'm sorry, September 20.
Hopefully
It's
that's.
just, yeah, it's just,
Does it say July something?
yeah, it does.
Where?
On the agenda. So, it was in one of the versions.
I see, on the agenda, not the
Yeah,
actual minutes.
not
I
in the,
see.
yeah, not in the minutes.
Okay,
It was no big deal.
okay, thank you.
Folks had a chance to read the minutes, and do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Donna.
Second.
Thank you. And any corrections? Great, the minutes that we've checked that one off. For the ARC of Northern Virginia legislative updates, we sent updates in the DD listserv that are folks on Bertra and my list. Unfortunately, there was no mailing to other members on Robert's list, was there this month?
I didn't follow your question.
So in the mailing that we sent to the list that Bertra and I have, we have an ARC update in the body of the notice. The most important part of the notice and the update is an upcoming meeting with folks running for the General Assembly.
Right.
Please, even if you don't listen, sign up for that and try to listen, because it's important. The whole General Assembly is turning over this year. And it's important for the General Assembly to see that there is a large constituent that's interested in disability issues. The questions are all pre-planned. I believe the candidates have had a chance to see those questions, but it's important that when they come on to these sessions that there's the wide audience. So please, we have a link in the email that Bertra and I sent out last week. And if you can sign up for that, that would be terrific.
Right, and Sherry, and for clarification, what Robert sent out, because they were part of the minutes, these are the updates for the September meeting, not the October meeting, for the ARC of Northern Virginia.
I sent updates in the mailing that.
Right. No, I was saying for what Robert sent, I just wanted to clarify that what he sent was from the September meeting.
Next on the agenda is the presentation that we postponed from last month from LaVoice on long-term supported employment and day support planning.
Right.
Are you sharing your screen for this?
I will share my screen for this, yes. So let me just first open up my presentation. And it's short and long-term planning for employment and day support.
Will this presentation be provided to those online?
I'm going to share my screen.
Other than that, will you mail them out?
It'll be sent out with the minutes. We'll send the presentation out, yes.
Great, thank you.
I also have a request. If there is anyone who's attending this meeting that wants to be added to Bertra on my list, we will have a copy of this and we'll just go send the copy after, along with the reiteration of the ARC update after this meeting. So if you would like to be on Bertra and my co-chair private list, please put your name and email address in the chat and we will add you to that list.
Okay. Are you able to see my screen? Those that are participating online, it looks that way from Sherry's computer.
Yes,
Yes.
we can see.
Okay,
Yes, we
so I will jump right in, and I will ask if you can note your questions or write them in the chat. I'd like to be able to work through the presentation and take all questions at the end of the presentation, please. Okay, so this is, we wanted to give an overview of what we've been doing, where short and long-term planning for employment and day support services specifically are concerned. As a quick recap, you may recall back in 2021, I think it was, Jim, we did the study with Public Consulting Group. Gosh, it seems like a lifetime ago, on looking at practices, our current practices for day support employment and school transitions, with the purpose of looking at expanding day support and employment here in Arlington County, so that we actually have more true options for people in the county as opposed to having to go outside of the county for services. So that was a primary focus of that. So since that time, staff have actually been quite busy planning and working on implementing several goals and objectives from the recommendations there. I always like to start presentations off with just a recap of what the department's vision, mission, and values are. So Hopefully you are reciting these in your sleep at this point. But just a quick recap, the vision for DHS is a just and equitable community that is healthy, safe, and economically secure and free of systemic racism. Our mission, in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and people of color, we seek to create equitable access to the resources and opportunities needed for every community member to be healthy, safe, and economically secure. And our values, racial equity, access, inclusion, authenticity, and accountability. And these will all kind of be interwoven in my presentation, just keeping in mind what the vision, mission, and values are, and how our expansion for day support and employment are aligned with these important principles. So just want to highlight a few objectives where group day and employment services specifically are concerned. As previously mentioned, a primary focus is increasing capacity for group day and employment physically located in Arlington County. At the time that we did the study, and I don't think the data, in fact, I know the data hasn't shifted significantly, we were supporting more than 50% of individuals transitioning out of Arlington Public Schools were transitioning to programs outside of the county. And that was largely because of limited capacity of programs in Arlington County. And so we're looking to have more opportunities in the county for graduates, but also for those that are attending programs outside of the county, that should they desire to attend a program in the county, that they actually have that as an option. We're also looking to have more flexibility in program development and diversity of programming, and encouraging hybrid options. As I mentioned, last month in that meeting, some of this we're already doing. So for instance, we have a few people at Arlington Weaves, et cetera, that are actually attending part-time day program there at the studio, but they're also working the other time or volunteering. I believe I have one or two people. Actually, we have a few people at the CIC that attend part-time, but they do other meaningful day activities as well. And so we certainly want to have programming that supports and encourages that as well. And then just having diversity in who and how we're serving as well. So we are looking to have diversity and being able to support people with more exceptional medical support needs, with behavioral support needs. Oftentimes people with behavioral support needs, they're not able to attend day programs because we don't have programming, for them. They might not be able to do, say, 5 days a week. So how can we be flexible in our programming to support their needs? And we're also looking at supporting individuals in smaller programs and smaller settings as well. We're not changing anything about the CIC, but as we look to develop newer programs, we're looking to create smaller programs. Okay. So here's some other things before I get into some of the nuts and bolts. One of the things or recommendations in the PCG report was really looking at actually having a stronger foundation so that what we do today is sustainable in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, so that we're not going back and having to build the foundation after creating these new programs. So we want to be able to create a firm foundation in doing so. And so we have been working on revising all of our policies and procedures, developing new policies and procedures, and also making sure that our policies and procedures are reflective of our DHS mission, vision, and values. We've been doing quite a bit of staff training, particularly around leading with employment first. One of the things that we often hear from our families, and another recommendation from the PCG report, was the communications to families. So we think that we're doing great services, but if our families and our communities don't know about what we're doing, then we're missing the mark. So we've been busy working on updating, creating different materials, brochures, one-pagers, employment profiles of different people as well. And so we are also then looking to do more presentations and actually physically getting out in the community. We were actually just talking about that in our extended leadership team meeting for ADSD, Aging and Disability Services, of wanting to actually get out into the community more in terms of educating individuals and families about what we do, and not expecting that people are going to come to us, that they're going to pick up the phone and call, but making more of an effort to partner with our communities as well. We're doing a lot more interagency collaboration, so meeting with our various divisions in ADSD on educating them about what we're doing in developmental services, what some of the needs are of the individuals we support. I know we have a meeting actually later this month with a few members of the DD committee and our economic independence, specifically around some employment as well. So trying to do more things such as that. And then just community development. So I don't know if it's on this slide or a different slide, but we have, as you know, a community and workforce development specialist, and she's been doing some amazing work on, so when I say we're developing written materials for families, Delbria is developing written materials for families, but she's doing a lot of outreach. She's been doing some employment mapping, so identifying a variety of different employers or potential employers. She's not going out to try to get them to hire people per se, but doing a lot more education around what is a developmental disability, what are the employment needs of people with developmental disabilities. So to kind of, again, educating our wider community around developmental disabilities. So starting with this presentation, in the spirit of leading with employment, I would like to start there. So just a quick recap. The employment options as they currently exist are individual supported employment, and those are funded. I put on the right-hand side there the funding streams for those. Those are funded by DARS. They can be funded by a waiver or local funded. For individual supported employment, you are required to have a DARS assessment. And if DARS can fund that, then the waiver does not fund individual supported employment. So DARS is the first line for funding that, and likewise with local funded individuals as well. They must go through DARS for an assessment. And that's important because if we start funding someone local funded without going through that DARS assessment first, and they get a waiver, then those services are interrupted because waiver won't pick up to fund individual supported employment if there's not first a DARS assessment. Group supported employment is both, can be waiver funded and local funded, but before waiver will fund group supported employment, you have to have a DARS assessment. And then lastly, I wanted to note that we contract with a variety of different employment services organizations for group supported employment. And we also have, actually, we have sorry, that's there because I wanted to highlight our group supported employment that we have at Fort Myers currently, and that's operated by Service Source. And we are actually going to be meeting with them in the coming weeks about expansion of that under the contract, which seeks to have 2 different settings. So that's in process. Okay, continuing with employment. We have a performance measurement plan that we actually do for support coordination. Each of our programs in the Department of Human Services has at least one program measurement plan, PMP. And I'll send that out when we send the minutes because we actually just finalized it. One of our metrics that we are looking at is individuals and employment, of making sure that we're having that annual conversation that is required for every person receiving active support coordination. And then we have another metrics that looks at, of those individuals that state they want to work, how many of them are actually working. And so for FY23, out of 256 individuals receiving active support coordination, 253 had the annual employment conversation. And I am drilling down and trying to understand why the other three did not have that annual employment conversation. 99% is great, but that should be 100%. And so those questions include, asking if you're interested in employment and exploring barriers. So it's not a simple yes, no question in terms of asking about employment. And I know that can be a little annoying for some of our families that are just clearly not interested in employment. But we still need to have that annual conversation that includes barriers and obstacles every single year because things could change. And we want to make sure that someone is saying no, that they understand what, that in the context of employment first, that anybody can and should have the opportunity, to work and having those conversations. And if there are barriers, that we're addressing those barriers as well. So of those individuals that had the annual conversation, 97 of them indicated a desire to work. Of that number, 43 were actually employed in integrated competitive jobs, employment. And that's pretty significant. The state actually has a metrics of 50% of those individuals that say they have a desire to work that are actually working. Arlington County and Loudoun specifically are leading the entire state in that particular area for that particular metrics. And we're pretty proud of that. And those that are not in competitive integrated employment, they have employment outcomes in their plan where they might be working on soft skills or other barriers to employment. So it's not just, that we ignore and we're not focusing. So we are still targeting employment for those individuals, just not yet in competitive integrated jobs. So a few things again, that I mentioned some of the things that Delbria specifically is doing is employer mapping, looking at different categories of employment, whether that's, doing office work, grocery, administrative. She's got about 25 different areas that she's done mapping by category. And then she's identified employers in those different businesses in those different areas. And eventually we want to target all of those in terms of educating our workforce and work community here in Arlington on what a developmental disability is. We've also been looking at individuals that are successfully working and doing employee profiles. And so we're getting those profiles and the stories of, say, an individual we have that works at National Airport, and a picture with a little, with a description of their experience with employment that we want to be able to put up. And, whether, you see the bulletin boards in a grocery store or in Starbucks, so that as you're going out into the community, you're seeing people with developmental disabilities and what they're doing and how they're employed and can be employed, with a little QR code on how you can reach back out to us for more information about employment. And we did, from a conversation I actually had with Bertra, are looking to expand those profiles to include individuals that are doing non-traditional type work, because not everybody is working, in a job that has minimum wage or that they're going to Monday through Friday, 9 to 2. Some individuals we support are doing, they're cutting grass or they're collecting recyclables. They're doing some very, creative and different things. And we want to include those narratives in our profiles as well, in terms of employment, and not, boxing ourselves in terms of what that looks like. We've also created an employment one-pager that we're updating, and we'll share what we've been doing. I can send this out through Robert as well, so that you all can have and see what we're doing. And we've created an employment first position statement and an employment first brochure as well. So what's next? Jim, plug your ears. I like to kind of dibble and dabble a little bit in and out of the box. And so I would like, where employment is concerned, to focus a little bit more on some of the non-traditional employment models. And I think this wasn't my idea, this was actually Bertra's idea that, if there was one year, say in FY 26 or 27, we were able to have some type of small business grant, for individuals we support. So let's say someone does want to cut grass, as a type of employment, are we able to support them, say, with a $200 grant to buy a lawnmower? Thinking outside of the box of doing something like that. That's way down the line, Jim. Maybe not way down the line, but down the line. And supporting small businesses operated by individuals, with developmental disabilities. So looking at what individuals we support are currently doing, and are there ways that we can support those? So continue to support the more traditional types of employment, but also looking at those more non-traditional types of employment that people are doing, and how can we also support those efforts as well? When we look at people with developmental disabilities being employed, because of the different barriers and obstacles that they face, they don't always do so well in those traditional, hourly jobs. And so I think if we're going, in my opinion, to really support them, that we have to be creative in how we go about doing that. So moving on to Developmental Services Group Day. Just a quick, overview of what Group Day, also known as Day Support. This is a service that is provided to help individuals acquire, retain, or improve skills of self-help, socialization, community integration, career planning, and adaptation via opportunities for peer interactions, community integration, and enhancement of social networks, with the emphasis on people going to day support programs, really on skill development for those programs, for individuals there. And this is typically offered in a non-residential setting, center-based setting. So the CIC, Woodmont Center that you're familiar with, Arlington Weaves, et cetera, those are examples of day support programs. So our existing options here in the county is we have county-owned programs such as those two that I just mentioned, and then the new employment readiness program that I'll talk about briefly is licensed or will be licensed as a day program with a habilitation focus, but it's still a day program, and it's important to keep that in mind. At the core, it's a day program with that emphasis on skill building and skill development and socialization and everything that comes along with the day program. But we also have several non-county programs that we contract with as well. Programs such as MVLE and Melwood. Service Source has a few programs. They operate the CIC in Arlington Weaves, et cetera. But we've got some great providers that also support the individuals that we support. And so we are grateful because that's a partnership. So even though we are looking to develop more here in Arlington, we still very much rely on and need them as providers as well. So we're not looking to abandon ship with any of them while we look to expand. So we are certainly looking to maintain those important and critical partnerships. Our county programs that I put our capacity here, currently Arlington Weaves, et cetera, which has a capacity for 15 individuals. Do you have because I don't know if you can follow along in there if you'd like. Are there any more of the handouts I had around the table? I don't know if they're. You're right. Yeah, can I ask you to maybe share with Joe if that's okay?
An extra copy. Read some.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but everybody had.
Oh,
If you go.
I guess some people struggling to see the computer screens. Okay, thank you. Community Integration Center, more affectionately known as the Woodmont Center, has a capacity of 55, and Employment Readiness, which is set to open in the fall, will have a capacity of 15 individuals. Okay. Okay. That's just, I think I just have a different slide saying the same information in a different way. Apologies there. I'll take that one out or one of them out when I send this out. Okay, so building capacity. Actually, let me go back. I think this particular slide is not completely redundant, but I wanted to put the emphasis on two things that we are looking to do to build capacity in the short term. And by short term, we are referring to in the next 1 to 2 years, 1 to 3 years possibly, because some of the long range plans, they're going to take time because they're long range and they just involve a lot more. And I'll get into a little bit of that later. So we are able to build capacity by increasing 15 at the employment readiness. So that's an additional 15 individuals that can be served in day support. And then the next slide here, I want to tell you something that we're also looking to do is to expand the CIC to include community-based integrated day support. And so, as you know, the CIC is a center-based day support, and we're looking to expand that to include 15 slots specifically for community-based. And like it says here, that's an extension of the Woodmont. It's a part of that contract for the Woodmont Center. And it is expected that participants will be fully integrated within the community. I'll elaborate on that a little bit more as well. It is also one of the things I want to point out here, somewhat at the discretion of the provider. So that doesn't have to be the same 15 people every single day, week after week after week. It could also look like 15 different people, 1 week, 15 different people 1 day, but on any given day, 15 individuals would be expected to be engaged in the community for integrated activities in the community. This maximizes opportunities for inclusion of individuals in the mainstream where skill building and relationship development are best developed and reinforced. And it also exposes individual participants to opportunities of integration amongst individuals that are not disabled. So integration is not just about being in the community, but how well are you developing relationships with your community? How well are you developing skills in your community as well? So not just going to a food court, for instance, and sitting with your peers who happen to also be non-disabled, and you're not really integrated into the community and interacting with non-disabled, individuals and developing skills on how to do that, as well. And so there's greater opportunity for that with community-based integrated day support. And so some of the individuals I would imagine that are part of the center-based at the CIC will be able to participate in some of the community-based. I do want to really underscore, however, that just because someone is at center-based, it doesn't mean that they're never going out into the community, because community integration is a required part. It's an integral part of a day support program. So you can't just be in a day program Monday through Friday, 9 to 3. You're still getting out into the community. The difference with community-based is that it's just more fully integrated into the community. I just listed here just some different examples of different types of community based activities that participants or individuals might be able to engage in. So, volunteer work, doing internships, health and wellness trainings, they could go, let's say, you want to do something at a dentist office, for example, for somebody that struggles, with that, of setting something up to be able to take individuals to a doctor's office, dental office, to kind of understand. And it's a difference in terms of, going to a dentist and you're actually not going to get your tooth pulled that day. But just going to kind of desensitize you to some of the things as well. So it's opportunities to do things like that. Job clubs, workplace visits and tours, doing different types of classes and workshops, vocational training, arts, crafts, social clubs. And that's just a very small list of things that I'm looking forward to people being able to do and participate in community-based integrated day support. Let's see, being in community-based, I want to emphasize this as well. It doesn't mean that individuals are going to be outdoors in the cold, in the hot sun, all day, every day. It's actually quite the opposite when you consider the types of activities that we're doing. So we're not talking about people just being, it's, 10 degrees outdoors and they're going to be out in the cold. The a few other things that I want to mention, because I know this has come up and is of concern perhaps to some, is the space. So we are planning, and we've always planned this to be the case, that because it is part of the Woodmont Center, that those 15 individuals will begin and end their day at the Woodmont Center. We have strongly encouraged in the RFP process that the provider is identifying community partners around the different activities that they would do. So St. John's, for example, as I understand, we know, because we have people that go there, they operate a community-based day program in Fairfax County, and they partner with some of our faith groups, other civic groups, in exchange for space. They might do, some administrative tasks and different things, and they're able to use space and also engage in some community activities, there. So we are encouraging partnerships in the community where space is concerned during the day, rather than assuming unnecessary costs to the county on having a space that we're not really using. My concern in having a physical space for a community base is that if you have the space, you're going to use the space, and it'll be a fallback. And before you know it, you are doing community-based in a center. And so again, we have a built-in plan for how the provider will utilize space in the community, and that doesn't have to mean that the county is paying for that space. So again, emphasizing every participant, whether you're center-based or community-based, you will begin your day at the CIC and you will end your day at the CIC. We also know that emergencies, happen. And so in the event of unforeseen, emergencies and other circumstances, if participants need to be at the CIC for the day, that's okay. But the program just can't be structured where that is happening every single day, because we don't have the capacity for that to be the case. I see you have a question, Sherry. Hold on to that question. Okay.
There are other questions in the chat.
Mhm.
I've been responding to the ones that I can, and I'll let you know about the ones I can't respond to.
Okay. Okay.
I'm following it.
Okay, yes. So I think this is my last slide before questions. I want to talk a little bit about some of our long-term development and capacity building. So also in the RFP for the Community Integration Center / CIC, which just closed, I think a week ago, Friday. We did add in there 2 satellite locations. As space to be determined, and I'll give you kind of an idea of what we've done where space is concerned for these 2 satellite locations as well. Each of these sites will serve 18 to 21 individuals, so each of them can serve up to 21 individuals, and that exact number is to be determined in partnership with the providers selected for this program. But we are planning on space that can support up to 21 individuals each. So that's up to 42 additional slots once these 2 satellite sites are fully realized. And we're looking in terms of our long-term planning, it is not likely that those will be in the same fiscal year. We'll probably launch one year, and the second one in another, year as well, looking at our projected and future growth. Which reminds me, I have data to talk about for that as well, which I can pull up in a second. So we are currently with the RFP for the CIC looking for a provider for both the current existing Woodmont Center as well as these 2 satellite locations. I do want to speak briefly as to why we did it that way. Is because it gives us more opportunity for having just increased fluidity across the different programs, so that if we have individuals, so let's say, for example, we have a satellite location that is going to be primarily focused on individuals with exceptional behavior support needs, or those with more cognitive, dementia, or something, we have the flexibility of being able to move people around in the programs with the same provider. We don't have that flexibility when we've got a larger program, say that's operated by multiple providers, because people have the choice of a provider, not necessarily the choice of where that service is. So we wanted parents and families and individuals to have the flexibility of being able to be in a program that is tailored to and fits your needs without having to compromise on your choice of a provider, if that makes sense. So the RFP will identify a provider for the existing program plus the satellite, including the community-based. And we have also been working on additional locations. So we started, and you may recall, because I know I gave some updates like in the winter when we were doing this. I remember it was the winter because I remember going out when it was very cold. We actually started out in working with the Department of Environmental Services, Office of Real Estate, on contracting with a broker. That broker worked with DES and DHS in looking at and identifying commercial space. So while we are currently looking at county space, we actually started and exhausted several months of time and effort in looking at commercial space. What we found, however, unfortunately, many property management companies didn't actually even want to talk to us and to consider commercial space for individuals for a day support program. And so the broker reached out to a variety of different property management companies throughout Arlington County. We identified through that process 5 property managers only that were willing to have conversations and to show us space and potentially lease space to us for a day support program. We, Jim, myself, along with staff from DES and our Office of Real Estate, went and did tours at each of these different sites and settings. 2 of them we ruled out because of ADA compliance issues with, too many steps and hills. So we also took into consideration mobility issues for people that could potentially be supported at these programs. And so we ruled out 2 for that reason. 1, we ruled out a 3rd because they didn't want to lease to us for more than 3 years. They were looking long range of doing something else with that space. And so we ruled that out, which left us with 2 providers. Of those 2 providers, 1 then pulled out because they changed their mind about having that space used for a day support program. And so we were left with a 5th space, which happened to have been a preferred space. And so we entered into negotiations for that space, but the costs, as it turned out, were astronomical. And so we could not proceed with that based on the cost that we were looking at. And so that's how we got to the point of looking at county space. So it's not a matter of only looking at county space. We exhausted efforts of looking at commercial space first. And now we have started looking at and exploring county space. And again, working with the Office of Real Estate. So in Arlington County, the Office of Real Estate makes the ultimate decision about where programs and services are located, but they have been working very closely and collaboratively, with our staff in terms of hearing what are the needs of the program. And so we're telling them based on everything from socialization, mobility, physical health, medical, ADLs, all of that is going into the identification of space. But we also know that this is a long-term, project as well. So the first step of which, is identifying space, and then the capital improvement planning process as well is a part of that as well in terms of the funding that has to come along with that. So these are things that actually take time. So we have focused on not being completely dependent 100% on long range planning and doing what we can to have some short-term interventions and planning as well in the meantime to meet our needs in the next 1 to 3 years. That closes my presentation and I can now take questions. We can start maybe with some of the ones in the chat. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, if you bear with me for just 1 second, I do want to, yep, that's what I'm going to do. Am I still sharing my screen? Let me make this a little bit bigger.
Sharing the Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah. So, Sherry and Bertra asked me, and I think this will go into some of the conversation Sherry and Bertra you are going to have with budget ask perhaps. So we looked at, you want me to share this now or later?
Are we talking about caseloads? Are we talking about?
Caseloads and caseload graduates. I think this gets into the later part
Yeah,
of the budget.
that'd be for
So,
the next-
okay, so I'll hold on doing that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now and we'll come back to that. So questions in the chat?
Yes.
And by things that you've already answered, if you can read the question and the answer, that'll be helpful to us who don't have the screen.
Sure. Okay, so the first question is from David Dolaher. My apologies if I'm mispronouncing. On the objective slide, how is hybrid defined? What does this term encompass?
So hybrid is defined as being able to basically to split your day is having a variety of different options that you can do. So the more traditional approach, particularly with day support, and even how we offer choices is that you have to choose, or you choose the day support route, or you choose the employment route, you choose meaningful day or something else, but it's sort of you are directed one or the other, that if you do day support, you can't do employment. If you do employment, you can't do day support. And so what we are trying to shift, and this is going to take some time because it's not just something that, because the county says we're encouraging and supporting hybrid, we have more flexibility perhaps where our county programs are concerned, but we want people to have choices so that if you are doing day support for say 3 days, but you might have some skills where you can work, 2 days a week. We want people to have flexibility to be able to do a combination of work, employment, work, volunteer, just have more flexibility in what their day looks like.
Next question, which I was able to answer, but I'll say the response to that. Who leads the employment readiness program? Said that it was awarded to Service Source recently.
Correct.
Okay. And then the next question from David, is the employment readiness program community-based or center-based?
It is, so the employment readiness program is it's a center-based program. But it has both center-based instruction and community-based instruction. So participants will start and end their day at the center. They'll spend probably the majority of their day at the center, but there's a lot of community-based activities that will be built into the program as well. And a lot of that, may have employment habilitation, focus as well, but it is a center-based program. With both community-based instruction and center-based instruction and travel training.
Next question from David. If the employment readiness is opening in fall of 2023, which means within the next 2 months, to answer this by the way, when will participants learn more about the program? You can probably elaborate, but here was my response. We currently have a planning committee with representation from the DD committee to plan the grand opening of the employment readiness program at the end of this year. The committee is developing a communication plan and there will be community outreach to inform members about it. We don't expect it to be fully operational until after the new year. It is still underway.
Okay, so a couple of things. We expect it to be operational in December, the beginning to middle of December.
Okay.
We have, in addition to everything in terms of educating and informing, we started last year with our transition planning with Arlington Public Schools. So every students that transitioned or aged out in June of 2023 were informed about this program. we developed the one pager with that in mind so that as our support coordinators were talking to families about the employment readiness program, they had some written information that they could also give to the family as well that kind of explained a few more, what this program is all about. So we started reaching out a year ago and educating and our transition coordinators, our families, but particularly our graduates about the program. So I'm not sure if I got it all of that question or not.
I was under the understanding that some folks already expressed an interest, so have people gone on to other places as they didn't get?
Some have. So some have, because, with some of our graduates coming out, and that's their choice, I must emphasize. So because, the program wasn't ready, at July 1st. So several are engaged in other, meaningful activities until the program opens. Others have gone on to transition to other, day support programs as well. The program has a capacity for 15. I believe we have sent to Service Source 21 referral packages. And so they will screen through and looking at those individuals. So we also have, because they've done this before. So we are also hoping that, or looking that, some people will transition out of the program sooner than others. So, we might have people moving to employment, even if it's, say, part-time of doing something in 6 months or in 1 year. So eventually the program will have individuals that are continuously transitioning out so that we can transition new employers into the program as well.
I'm sorry, just without leaving the subject. So how would Service Source be able to screen out? If someone's like too disabled, will they screen out, or what are their?
So no one is too disabled to start.
That's my point. How else would you make a decision?
It depends on what their employment goals are. And their employment outcomes. So somebody could be in the program, for example, that has a goal of, say, working 1 day a week. They may want to transition to a more traditional employment for more traditional day support programs, say, or something else. And so their goal might be to work, 1 or 2 days a week. They might be ready sooner than somebody who really wants to move into competitive, integrated, individual supported employment. So it's really going to be driven by the goals and outcomes of the person. Individuals are supported in staying in this program for up to 3 years, with intensive focus on getting them ready for employment. So we're not forcing someone out or saying, that you're too disabled, you're not going to be able to work. We're operating on the premise of employment first, that every person with a disability is capable of working. We just have to address the barriers and obstacles to that.
And ensuring our commitment to equity so that.
Yep, absolutely.
So you're going to watch to make sure that people are not screened out,
right,
because they have disability plus this plus that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely not. And then with Service Source, they actually have a workforce and employment readiness developer. So that person's role is actually working more and engaging the workforce in the community, more, and focusing on those employment opportunities in the community. So whether that's volunteering, whether that's doing internships, whether it's partnering with, say, an employer to come in to do some training around, doing interviews or working on resumes. So they have a full-time position that is devoted just to the employment readiness, where the potential employers and the community is concerned.
It's good discussion. Okay, next question from Lucia. How will the 15-person community-based program out of Woodmont CIC access the community in small groups of 3 to 4 people with the staff or other arrangements?
So the ratio for the community and the community-based integrated day is 1 to 5. So that would be, so it's not taking 15 people, going different places in the community. It has a ratio.
Staff to 5.
1 staff to 5 individuals. And the participants for the community-based integrated day support and their parents or guardians have to be agreeable. So we're not forcing anyone to do this, program. So there has to be a willingness and a commitment to actually doing that, and an understanding that you're going to be out in the community a lot more. Again, not out in the cold and excessive heat, but you're going to be more integrated into the community. And throughout the public consulting group, we were hearing from parents. I mean, a lot of parents want that. That exposure of being out in the community as opposed to being in a center all day. Center-based is great, but it's not for everyone.
I thought I understood it, but I don't understand. So the CIC Woodmont Center ratio is 1 to 5?
No, the
Or-
CIC center-based ratio is 1 to 3.
But the community one is 1 to 5.
1 to
How
5.
does one person support 5 people doing 5 different things of their choice?
Well, they're not necessarily doing 5 different things of their choice on that day. I never said they were doing, they're doing,
So 5 people have to volunteer at the library if someone wants to do a volunteer activity.
but there would be different things. So if you then have 3 different groups, this is just an example, could be doing, the library, another group could be going to an animal shelter, another could be doing some kind of workshop around some health or wellness. And it could possibly be switching, back and forth, being creative. So let's say in the morning, you've got 15 people or 5 of those people that are going to say the animal shelter. But in the afternoon, those 5 people, they don't want to go to the library to do volunteer work, but you might have another 5 people that do want to do that. So there's flexibility. It's just at any given time, there have and Service Source would be Service Source might not be there's an RFP, so I don't know whoever the provider is going to be, got to get it out of my head in terms of that. But whoever the provider is going to be would have the oversight of being able to do all of that scheduling. And they're going to need that flexibility. So it's not for us to say, that you have to have the same 15 people every single day. Or if you have those 15 people, it might be a different 15 people or some variation of that in the morning, and it might be different in the afternoon. So for that reason, Sherry, I think you have to have some flexibility so that we're not forcing people to have to do things that they don't want to do.
My concern was a very high staff ratio, and how can people have choice and be all over the place?
But there's still a lot more choices that's being offered in the course of a day for what people are doing.
I look at what we're doing at our stomping ground. That's exactly what we're doing. Like, we'll do maybe 3 big things a day. Maybe it'd be a 2-hour walk at Roosevelt Island every Friday to clean up, and you could get 20, 30 people there. And those same people may not sign up for 1 o'clock yoga or the movie night that night, but it really does, even people with really high support needs are kind of able, it's just happening. People are responding to the options and the variety of choices. So there are some frequent flyers that would sign up for each thing, but that's exactly how we're doing it. And we don't have a higher ratio than that. I would say my gut is, Bertha, you're in a lot of these activities. Or for adults that are there for the people with disability. I just know that I'm there a lot of times, and there's a really big group.
But
And there may be one
there's
intern.
There's always more participants.
So that's what I'm sorry. We're saying the same
The
thing.
ratio.
I'm sorry.
Adult supervision and participants, 1 to 5 doesn't worry.
No, I'm with Bertrand. Sorry, I wasn't saying the same thing differently. Yes. I think when adults have a choice and they're really motivated. I just had an interesting conversation with the model in Maryland where they're kind of paying for all these incentives, always feeding people, always having these things like raffles, like a lot of things. And they're like, well, how do you do this without a programming budget? And I was like, well, people are intrinsically motivated to be social and to learn and to grow and to be with their friends. And I kind of laughed about that hot and cold. They would fire me immediately. You can't hire me because we are out there in the cold and we're out there when it's really hot. But that is that social component that is really motivating. So yeah, I see the fear around the table, but that is exactly what we're doing. And it's kind of working. We only lose people occasionally.
Yeah, and what we're hearing, I mean, that is also what our families are asking for. And again, being able to offer a variety. So it might not be for your son, or your son, but for somebody else, this is exactly what they're looking for and what they're asking for.
And we're seeing people with walkers, with CP, that are asking, they really are craving these walks, because everyone just always assumed that they were not part of that population. And everyone seems to be able to agree that they want to change the route or change the pace to have that other person there. So I think when you build it, people will come.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any, yep. If I could, I just want to switch it up a little bit. We'll go back to questions in the chat, if that's okay, if there are questions around the table here.
We also have a gentleman in the corner. Tommaso Servo was not identified as coming to this meeting, and let the minutes show that his wife was shocked.
I have an age assessment and staffing profile. Quick question. When you say graduates, I think I understand what you mean. But, most of our graduates, I think, graduated in 22.
Right.
For all their adults. So, but given that, when my son graduated, we had not a clue about what he was actually able to do. I blame the testing industry because they had developed any tests for autistics, as because most people know are some autistic, and not verbal, he stopped speaking. So on the assessment side, we might, I think, coalesce about the one course all of them need to graduate, and probably no one knows how many actually took it, which is economics and personal finance. And what's wonderful is that's available online. So the key to the trick to the whole thing is to dial back to APS and say, look, you have this fabulous course. Everybody has to take it to graduate. Our kids graduate, so they don't have a counselor. They don't have a way to line up that course so they can do it. So I just see it as, we just need the key and the easy follow-up. Then we have an understanding. What Mike has said himself is presumed competence. And he never really had this ability to say that until he started using the letterboard. And so when you listen to people that are now writing and crafting and speaking for themselves, they basically had writing needs, but we can help employers and former people who kind of respond to RFPs. If we give us a sense of the voice and capacity, the mental capacity, whether physical or mental, these folks surprise us. I mean, there's a tremendous amount that they can do. So anyway, I would add that it's my ideas.
So with that particular class, I think for people with a standard diploma, that might be a requirement. Many of our students that are transitioning, that's not a requirement. One of the other things.
I'm simply saying we have a missing component so that we can assess for our own kids. I'm saying I need to know, and I've already discovered this because I can walk you through that. But that's just the point. I'm not talking about capacity or capability. It's just we assume that about all they can do is and they can do more.
So I just one quick comment, and then I think Bertra has a question. The third part of the public consultant group was school transition. And so not here talking about that today, but that's a completely different presentation because there's actually quite a bit that we've been doing there because we learned that there are some things we can do differently. There are some things we can do better, where how we transition our students and prepare them for adult services, definitely starting, earlier of having those conversations with families. So at a different meeting or something, I can give an update on kind of what we're doing differently, smarter in terms of how we're working with Arlington Public Schools on transitioning and getting our students ready for adult services. Virtual.
Thanks, so boys. Just first of all, I just want to say thank you. Because I think the work that you've done supporting our population, this amazing house, the center at Sequoia, you know, there's no question about your commitment. And I think what we want to do is to collaborate and guide us forward. And I think when I hear you kind of struggling about how people at the center will be integrated in the community, first we've got to get them out of the center. All right. So we have desires that are aspirational, and that we look forward to working with you. More specifically, the mapping exercise that your staff is undergoing, just need to know the timeline on it. This is great that this is happening. We are not going to let Arlington County off the hook. We need to be mapping employment opportunities with Arlington County. So at some point in the future, when we're ready, we'd like to see, you know, what opportunities might be available down at the recycling, compost, and whatever that facility is called out. There's got to be opportunities down there. So make sure that the staff is not just looking at the private sector. Arlington County needs to hire our kids. In terms of space, I just had two suggestions. One is APA. Those buildings have space. OSD has been trying to get space allocated for some of these community-based programs. I don't know what the resistance is, but I'm sure Arlington County may be able to mention those with APA, and those are spaces in the community, right? The other suggestion is to look at churches. There's so many empty churches throughout Arlington.
Yes.
And there's one on, I forgot, there's one in, recently that's having a whole discussion right now with APA.
Okay. And then the third thing, of course, is the numbers. You mentioned we've got 256 clients.
That are active.
That's good. 97 wanted to work, and of those 97, 43 are employed. So then that leaves 164. So of that 164, 85 are in the day support program.
How did you get to 85?
55, 15, and 15.
No, because we have people in day support programs all over the metropolitan area.
No, but it's still part of this 256 clients, no?
It is a part of the 256.
There's more who aren't. Are you talking about just the people in Arlington who are in day programs?
No.
I think I was following.
Okay, let's try to finish. 256 clients are receiving support. 97 wanted to work and 43 are employed.
Right, of that 97, 43 are employed.
So that leaves 164. Yes? 97 and 164. So of the remaining 164, 85 are currently involved in day support. Whether at Weaver, CIC, or at the new center.
Well, that's where I think it gets, because those are just the counts for people that are in day support in Arlington.
It doesn't matter. Don't. Let's just, there's 79 individuals, according to my math, that we've not accounted for. They've not signed up for, they're not working, or they've not indicated a desire to work, and they're not currently in day support.
But they are in day support because they could be
someplace else.
They're someplace else. They could be at MVLE in Springfield. They could be at Melwood. We have, I think, Ivory, about 21 individuals at Melwood here in Arlington.
Okay.
We've got several individuals at various service source programs, Best Buddies, and we also have so they're in different places, MVLE,
And we have people that are employment programs, but not yet in competitive integrated jobs. So they're receiving employment support because they aren't in competitive integrated employed jobs.
And they could also be in group supported employment, which is not competitive integrated employment.
What is that?
The group supported jobs, the employment support that she did.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
So last month, when you said the caseload is growing, subscription is down, I think what Birch is asking, or if you're not, it's what I'm curious in, how many people are not doing anything?
Right.
What is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the golden.
We're, right.
Because we,
And where are the rest of us?
So I don't have that number
Yeah, that's
here. I
fine.
can tell you it's a small number, but I can report out on that number, whether it's via email with other information that I send out. It is a small number, but we also have people that are over the age of 64, that are considered, they're retired and they consider themselves retired, so they're not going to day programs. They're not working. They do other meaningful day. Most of them tend to be in group homes, so they're engaged in other meaningful day activities through a residential provider. Then we also have people that we support with our Arlington Adult Day, as well, that are older, over the age of 64, that go there. I think we have about maybe 4 or 5 people actually now, because we just added another person. We have 5 people that go to Adult Day.
Mary Marshall.
One,
Very,
Yeah, which would be.
one
Resource.
last point. Sherry's summary of her meetings with these parents mentioned that some of the parents want to continue education. And I just want to mention that adult education is an option, and APS should be able to accommodate our kids with continued education. I just, our kids have taken high school classes. Our kids took the financial literacy. They're certified in financial literacy. I think we as parents have to recognize the possibilities and push the envelope and make the request.
right.
And I think if parents, along with DHS, make the request of APS.
So let me tell you one of the things we're actually doing where our workforce and community development specialist is concerned is we're looking to actually reach out and partner with Northern Virginia Community College, because we don't have students this year, but we did, in previous years, mostly before COVID. One year, we had 4 individuals in aging out of IDEA services that went on to Northern Virginia Community College. So I want to know, how can we partner with Northern Virginia Community College to educate you on how our students can be supported, so that becomes even an option for even more students, as well. So I don't know, and I can't speak to what Arlington Public Schools is doing. And as we plan with Arlington Public Schools, I will learn more about what they're doing in that respect. But for adult services, if we are going to have students attending, I want to know how we can support them while they're there, and what that looks like. I don't know what it looks like, but we're at least starting that conversation.
Excellent. It's all good. Thank you so much.
So theoretically, someone from, that's funded through DHS could provide accommodations for an adult ed class.
So currently we actually we have a couple of people that are working on degrees, and they, with waiver. And so they could have a personal assistant if they need someone to go to class with them, to support them, whether that's around taking notes or, or other accommodations that they need assistance with. We have individuals that are currently receiving that type of support.
So if a person wanted to take a financial management class and they needed someone to assist them for communication or something, then that's something that they could work with their service coordinator to have someone provide personal assistance services to participate in adult ed.
Absolutely.
I think that should be looked at as a listen and learn topic. Like, I think that there is a component here that we could really build out, for a future listen and learn, this adult education, this partnership with Northern Virginia Community.
Yeah, and APS.
And APS.
Because I was gonna ask if because there's a lot of places, I was wondering if there's just a spot for more info. Because I know schools like, at least when I went to HB Woodlawn, it was separate from HB, but autism program, and many of those students, their path was straight to college, as HB is very encouraging that. I was curious, how does, if they are receiving, services, how does that work? And, when an individual wants to go to a 4-year college or something like that. So
George,
that's a lot of.
George Mason has a life program and the autism program.
Right, but even if it's out of state or something like that too, I mean, so I'm curious.
Well, APS did have a pilot. Our children don't like to talk about my own N=1, but they did have this pilot right after that, looked like DOJ was breathing down their necks. And they got a teacher out of retirement who got free space at Arlington Mill and did the curriculum. And there was, now I'm thinking, this is a great idea for integrated, inclusive opportunities. Like it would be very easy even to take, the hybrid teacher, wherever. You could do the Nova or you could do the virtual learning that APS is now doing. And with a couple people they all, at that opportunity, everyone came with their aid, their waiver supported aid. And they came to this classroom and they took this curriculum and they were supported. It was something they did, they wanted to do. It was basically free programming and people were starting to move toward their possible diplomas.
So this is another model that, initiated by parents.
Yeah, and
But
that's,
if we got some institutional muscle behind it, it could become a county program.
and when I was at ours, we had per individual, we had a client who served, and when we were at George Mason, I mean, one of the things we saw was, for that program was parents with their, kids, and you're absolutely right. I mean, parents were, have the kids and they were, I think so, I mean, there are individuals with autism or developmental disabilities who are, going to college. But as I said, I don't know that much about, and I agree.
It's true. I'm sorry that we're not going to be able to answer all the questions and go further with the discussion because we're not going to end up at the end of this without being able to take the action that we need to take as a committee during this meeting.
So we can put questions in the chat and
Yes.
any unanswered questions, if you can put in the chat and we'll make sure that we answer them and they will be answered as part of the minutes.
And if you can write, for those of you who are in here, if you can write questions and share them with the voice, then they will be shared. But I'm sorry, but if we absolutely positively need to get to a couple of actions, 3 actions tonight, and I'll just review them for you. One is what we want to ask of the county boards in terms of DD services. We put on the table, one of the things we put on the table was an increase in service coordination. Another item that was mentioned was transportation, money for transportation. Bertrand and I as co-chairs said that for the transportation, we don't have enough information to make a ask of the county board. But we hoped that the voice would have enough information to be able to ask for increase in service coordination. The other
For the voice can't, for the DD committee to ask.
we
that.
wanted you to give us enough information.
That
and
I
whether
can do.
This is something. Okay.
Yep.
The second areas were shared via Bertrand and my listserv. We'll go over today, but they're legislative priorities to share with the General Assembly. We will meet with them the week after the elections in November. So if we are to endorse anything, we need to endorse them tonight. And then the third is a motion that I think can be done fairly quickly, which is in the agenda, is that we'd like to appoint representatives to provide inputs to the scope of work for an RFP to provide behavioral services in Arlington. So that's all in the next half hour. So I'm gonna, if we can hopefully get the numbers from you, LaVoice, and see if there is support for a service, or for a request to the county board for service coordination, I'd like to go over that first. And I apologize to everybody for not getting their questions answered.
Let me just pull up and share my screen.
And Tom, did the legislative thing that Bertrand and I wrote, did that end up in this package?
Yeah, I thought I saw it in the text.
There are 3 copies, and we did email it this afternoon.
Okay, I don't have it. I don't have a copy, so I don't.
You want to see it?
It might be on the counter over here.
Okay, well, you start, I will go.
Okay. So what Sherry and Bertrand asked me to share, and I'll add some kind of story behind the data, if you will, is in preparation for your discussion around a budget asked for additional FTE for support coordination, looking at what is the average caseload size and factoring in total number of graduates. And I'll also explain kind of what one has to do with the other, and then also number of waivers as well. So on average, our average caseload sizes have gradually, increased since FY 19, where in FY 19, we had 34, FY 20, we had an average caseload for support coordination of 35. For FY 21, the average was 37. And in FY 22, 39, FY 23 and 24, 23, 38, and to date in FY 24 is 38. One of the things that's not necessarily in the data, but sort of a story behind the data, is in FY 17, we received 2 additional FTEs. Okay. Sherry wants me to continue.
Please continue.
Okay. We received 2 additional FTEs in FY 17. And we received 1 additional FTE in FY 20 for support coordination. And so I think it's interesting that with that, with those additional, that the numbers still steadily increase. If you look at the data, taking away those FTEs, the caseload sizes would actually be significantly higher than what they are there. So my point being is those additional FTEs did make a difference in terms of kind of keeping caseloads to some extent manageable. I don't know that I would consider 38 to be manageable. But the numbers would be significantly higher if we didn't have those additional FTEs. And we received support, particularly for the most recent one. I believe it was actually something that was in our county manager's office, county manager's budget, proposed budget, of actually adding that additional FTE just to keep pace with the growth of our front door for assessment and evaluation. The graduate numbers, those have also steadily increased for reasons I don't know why. We, apparently just have more students aging out, year to year with disabilities that are transitioning to adult services. I think some of that too is not necessarily just the numbers are increasing, but people are being referred and open to adult services more than say, 10, 15 years ago, where, you might have some students that are aging out of IDEA services with a disability, but they're not necessarily referred to adult services. So, we'd have to drill down and look at sort of the why behind that, but the numbers are gradually increasing. In FY 22, you'll see a 5 in the parentheses there, because there were 5 students that were deferred to FY 23 for aging out because of that recovery year. So that 32 actually includes 5 students from FY 22, if that makes sense. And then we're anticipating 21 for FY 24, and then our projections for FY 25 and 26 are 26 and 28 students respectively. We also average, since waiver redesign in 2016, we have averaged 20 to 23 new waiver slots each year. And in prior years, I would say with the exception probably of the last year, the majority of our new waivers tend to go to our graduates. We're now seeing individuals that are priority 1 for reasons other than just aging out of IDEA services. We have more individuals that are priority 1 because of behavioral issues. That's one of the criteria. If there is, behavior or medical for the individual where they need services right away, or there's something to do with the parents' health, where they need services. So we're seeing more individuals that are priority 1 for other reasons. So it's not necessarily just our graduates that are getting the waivers, or primarily, I should say. But nonetheless, the workload quadruples when you have an individual that is open to a waiver. And so the volume of work just increases. So when you look at on average, 38 to, individuals on a caseload, where 35 of those might be people with, or 30 or so might be people with active services with either a waiver or some local funded service. So you have an ISP. So it's a lot. So the difference between, say, 34 and 39 may not seem significant, but when that's 3 additional people with active support coordination, where you're doing more in terms of the documentation requirements, the annual planning, it's a lot of work. Another thing too, to keep in mind is that the governor is committed to eliminating the waiver wait list, the priority 1 wait list. And we know that's going to take some time, but what we're also seeing is an increase in the number of waivers that we anticipate receiving next year, provided that that goes, and is approved in the budget. So next year in January, we'll see, an additional 500 slots, for the state. And then we'll see, the usual that we would hope to get in FY25 for those slots as well. And that's great, getting more waivers, getting people off the priority wait list into services. But it means somebody has to do that work of actually doing that. So it does impact the work and the work that has to get done. So yeah,
So
you guys.
given the projections, if we were to hold to the 34 caseload, what is the projected need for more service coordination? Because that's what we based our last ask off.
So I don't know if I can say what that is. I can give my opinion, but I'm looking at my Muna and Jim over there.
Sorry.
Can I ask Sherry's question, basically?
I mean, you can't put us in this, we have to have the data. And you've given us the data, but we don't know how to interpret this data and how it translates to people. And
People being clients?
no,
Or people?
how many
Caseload.
coordinators do
Yeah.
we need to meet the projected caseload in 2025?
Okay.
Because we're asking for 2025 additional service coordinators, because we know that you've gone without any increases. We know that the number of waiver slots have increased in Arlington. We've been hearing about the aging parents and the resulting, it's one thing to have someone that you've planned for all these years, but when a parent becomes disabled or dies, that adds drastic, it's like emergency caseload right now because they've lost their primary caregivers. And then, so it just seems like we intuit that we don't know how you're doing what you're doing. We don't believe that what you're doing is sufficient, nor can it be maintained with 100 people coming in over 100 people coming into services in the next couple of years, right?
Yeah.
And the other 50 or so that came in the last 2 years, there has to be something. So what is that something and what is the number? Because for every graduate, I know that doesn't necessarily turn into a case, but if things work the way it usually works, what does that mean in terms of more people?
So whether I think they are graduates getting the waivers or other people getting the waivers that are shifting from monitor to active, the workload is still increasing,
Right.
regardless of who's moving into those slots. So if you look at the average caseload right now at being 38 to 39, but the projected growth as well of increased waivers. The other thing that we're also experiencing in Arlington County is an increase in transfers from other localities as well. And so we've gotten more transfers, I would say, in the past 1.5 years to 2 years than I've seen in my entire 8 years in my role overall. We average probably about 1 to 2 transfers a month or so lately, because, and part of that, not to put light on any particular CSBs, but some CSBs, they don't have the capacity. I don't know that we actually have the capacity where they are keeping individuals transition. Let's say they move to Arlington and you have a choice of your case management provider. Your choice really lies with that CSB where you actually live. So in the case of one of our CSBs, they have neighboring CSBs, upward of 88 individuals that are supported outside of their county. They're starting to now transition or transfer those individuals to the counties where they live. So we're seeing an increase
Yes.
from that. That just contributes to caseload sizes as well. And so we're seeing an increase from that as well.
So in
So-
the past, there were people who lived in Arlington but were case managed in another county.
Right.
And now those
Well,
counties
currently,
transferring them back to Arlington.
Right.
well, or say let's say hypothetically in Fairfax County, they might have had, say, 5 people that live in Arlington, but they continue to provide the case management. They're no longer doing that. They're now saying these individuals live in Arlington and we're transferring case management to Arlington.
Who's that?
Whichever CSB, I just use them as a hypothetically speaking.
I thought that they automatically had to take case management in the location where they were living.
They have a choice.
Yeah, oh,
But the choice is with the CSB where they live. The choice is not like you can't necessarily, we've allowed it, but the choice is not you get to just choose Arlington if you don't live here. The
Right.
choice is if you move to Fairfax County has to offer you choice,
Okay.
not Arlington.
So it's increasing.
So at this point, I still have the question, how many service coordinators take to meet the demand?
So if you look at I think it goes into what you want, what is an average or manageable caseload size. Now that I don't know, because that requires a lot more study in terms of the makeup of active compared to monitor, waiver compared to local funded. So there's a lot that goes into that. But if we look at in 2019, we averaged 34. And I could say, that was manageable. 38, 39, your workforce gets a little bit more stressed and strained. So if you want to try to get back down to say 32, 34, somewhere in that range, I think one additional FTE could do that, because you're shaving off individuals from 16, 17 different support coordinators to create an additional caseload, if you will.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm hearing, can't spend a lot of time on it, I know Jerry, is that if we ask for 30, if we say 30 is optimal, then that will allow for transfers in, increased waivers, which will probably push your number back up to 35. But I think
Eventually.
shoot for 30.
Yeah.
I'm looking at those numbers and they alarm me.
Yeah.
Which numbers?
The numbers, I can't see this, but I can see what Donna put
My
on.
big
Yeah, I
friend.
can't see that spreadsheet.
Oh, here, I'll show you. No, and I gotta tell you, we are seeing it all the time, even though whether you know this or not, Lucy did this thing about 8 months ago.
Is it okay if I
And she,
take photos?
please, she tells people when they call, do not go to Virginia. It is your worst choice. Do not go to Virginia. It's still a terrible place to live. If you've got a kid with disability, I mean, that's where we've ended up, right? That's why we're under a settlement. But I gotta tell you, and we tell people all the time, they're like, well, we're gonna move here because we want to have one of these properties. We want this community. I was like, well, this is just, it's right. I mean, this is not the state. So we are seeing that. I can tell you, we've had 10 people. I mean, and it's scary.
Bertra, so are you making a motion that we look at caseloads of a manageable size of 30, given the growth, so that we're
I
not
think-
always in a makeup mode?
For the purpose of budget
Yep.
requests,
Uh-huh.
I think we can validate that we want our caseworkers to target 30 cases. And 39 is too many.
Yep.
And I think if 30 is our target, then you'll very likely get up to 34, 35.
Yeah.
Because.
But I think
the growth.
20 is like a panacea.
We have,
So 30 is more
Okay, so is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion
With a calculator.
for,
Yes,
to calculate the number of service coordinators. We will ask for the number of service coordinators to support a caseload of 30
Per FTE.
per FTE, given not only what we're at right now, but also looking to these future growth numbers that are supported by the transition, by the coming in, by the aging, everything, and then new waivers. So Bertrand and I will work on that piece as well as the number of service coordinators, but that we will base that on FTE of 30. And that will be our beginning position that Bertrand, Joe, and I will take to the CSB. I second that. Is there, we don't have time for much discussion, but Joe, please ask your question.
Oh, no, I thought you
Okay,
were.
so I'm calling for a vote of
Yeah.
voting members for the CSB. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then we have Barbara. Do you want to vote on that?
Oh,
I'm not sure whether Barbara voted, but if you can put it in
Yes,
the.
can you,
Her vote is,
hear
her
me?
voice is over here, Sherry.
Oh, just put it in the chat. You say yay and we'll have the vote. Okay, that's number one. Number two, Bertrand, do you want to take our legislative?
Yeah, just very quickly, very high level. At the CSB yesterday, they provided the regional priorities. And it included, allowing clinics to dispense, to have and dispense drugs like Ativan and risperidone so that they can better manage aggressive behavior from individuals that are seeking care. Another is funding to incentivize professionals who are working as caregivers and social workers and so forth, which we talked about earlier, and I'm glad to know that it moved up. What we wanted to do, and then there's also modernization, some auto
Increases, scholarships.
Yeah.
All good things. They want us to endorse the CSB legislative agenda, which we will move to support. But then in addition, the DD committee has our legislative asks.
And one was the DD waiver. And as Deborah Warren said, the governor has made it a priority. We need to make sure that the services are there, the funding is here to provide the services. So I like the conversation we just had about what are we going to ask at the local level from our county board to make sure that our staff can handle the increase in waiver recipients. The other thing that's near to my heart and it affects a lot of people is the Medicaid caps. I can't believe it wasn't one of the priorities for the regional CSBs, but we've got to keep hammering at that. And I'm sure the ARC is still going to have it as a priority. So we wanted to include that. The other thing is rates for providers and care attendants. We suggested that while we incentivize the social workers and the caseworkers, we also incentivize the care attendants and providers. We can do the same thing. And just flag that for Deborah. And then finally, want to make sure that we don't forget the individuals who need services, but currently do not have the waiver for whatever reason. And we're looking at how we can do it locally. And then also, if there needs to be some policies at the state level so that those people are not dropped. Yeah.
So are you making a motion that we adopt that legislative agenda on behalf of the DD committees?
Well, I think if there's any quick discussion or any opposition.
Motion and I need a second before we can discuss it. So are you moving that we support that?
Go ahead. Mhm.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Questions? Additions? Subtractions?
I agree with.
Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye. And for purposes of the minutes, if you can send that, I don't know if you have that so that Tom can get that in the minutes.
It was sent in.
That's what was sent earlier. That's what you did. Okay, perfect. I did.
And Barbara Jones, if you can either say aye or you can say nay or say so in the minutes. I mean, in the chat. Okay, the third, someone, and I'm sorry I can't attribute this, but someone during the meeting last time said wanted to know whether or not we provide community and employment supports. In the agenda, the voice has provided the answer that we entertained, that they entertained as part of another RFP supports for behavioral supports in the community. They received no responses. And it wasn't a matter of the cost. It was just that no one responded to the RFP. There was also a discussion last month about the fact that the committees, the CSB, should have an ability to provide input into the work orders for upcoming RFPs, in addition to helping with selection in RFPs. So that's a CSB policy. So I would like to appoint representatives with a particular interest in the community behavioral supports aspect of this, or knowledge, to work with the voice and her group on this, what is it called? The scope of work. So I have a motion to do that. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Sure, it's a policy though.
I don't think it is.
It is a CSB policy because we just did our policies and procedures.
You have to get a copy of that.
We will as soon as we finish with our policies and procedures. So, and is there anyone who is a voting or non-voting member of this committee? And my guess is that LaVoice can probably use no more than 2, correct?
I'm sorry, but I was looking at trying to find your schedule.
Okay, that we had the understanding that you were beginning to work on an RFP for behavioral supports in the community.
No, I think what I said in this response here is that because we don't know that an RFP is even going to be needed for what we are looking to do, where we are. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're still in the very beginning stages of that, so I'm working on a couple of different strategies to figure out what the options might be. So we may not even have to go up to an RFP for this. But we may also be a possibility, if that makes sense.
So I don't know if we're talking about the same thing, because the voice mentioned something, an RFP that was issued, it had multiple programmatic areas.
Oh, no, so that's 2 different things. So,
None of the vendors responded to the behavioral support section.
No.
And so what we said is that there are community partners who can provide this. And then we volunteered to help develop a scope of work or improve the scope of work.
So that's under the part for community engagement, where we did not have providers respond to that part. So we put the community engagement. There were some other things, travel, training, other things that were in that RFP. That was for the regional, that was for the day support and employment contracts, the December 1st agreements. That's completely separate from this. So the first part of this response, where the RFP, the FY 2022 RFP is referring to the community engagement only under those agreements. So the behavioral supports, there is no current RFP for that or a plan to do an RFP for the behavioral supports. We are trying to figure out a way, and it may be an RFP or not, in terms of what Jim is working on trying to identify behavior support so that we can access funding available for that under the regional projects office, but that may or may not involve an RFP. Right. What we have done, and we are certainly committed to doing, in the past, you may recall, the DD committee was able to give input into the scope of work for this house. Correct. For example, you had a work group, Joe, you were actually on that. So in the event that we get to a point where we are looking at an RFP for behavior supports, we certainly will communicate that and create an opportunity to give input into the scope of work, not the RFP, but the scope of work, because that's beneficial.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of really wonderful feedback.
From that effort, correct.
Yeah.
So we would like to continue those efforts, and it was my understanding, and Bertram, maybe it was just mine, and maybe I'm just that it had to do with the behavioral supports aspect, which is something that is keeping so many people from being able to participate in community activities. And I'm just worried that, you know, with folks that are not able to go to day support or go on transportation or whatever because of behavioral supports, that we have at least a couple of people, if you're willing to take some help in looking at how the county can better support individuals who need it. And it could be just looking at how to find the vendors. It could be like social graces, for instance. It could be finding ways of doing it within the waiver service so we don't need to, but it's an area that I know members of this committee have told us time and time again that this is keeping people from having any kind of meaning in their life. And that we can't necessarily attack this as 28 of us, but if we had the will and a couple of people who have some sound ideas on needed behavioral supports, that we might be able to get somewhere with this.
So I think we probably should take it offline because the more we talk about it, the less we're talking about the same thing. Because I think we're talking about community engagement. And the vendors who responded to the day support and employment services RFP did not offer any response to the community engagement part.
Correct.
Okay, that's different from what anyone has ever said. So what we need is a team to work with you as needed to help identify partners that can provide that community engagement support. I think that's what we agree. A scope of work so that the community partners that we know exist are able to respond to that part of the RFP that was ignored by the other vendors.
I wouldn't say it was ignored, but it was sort of like an a la carte in terms of what they wanted and chose to provide. Also looking at a matter of what they're licensed to provide as well. Because, that's a licensed service. So if they're not licensed to provide that service, they wouldn't respond to the RFP as well. So it's, and we went according to, that is defined by what DBHDS says community engagement is, or community coaching is, or travel training. So we don't make that, we're not making that up. So providers know exactly what that service is that's being asked. They also have to look at, do they have the staffing capacity to be able to commit to those services as well? So I don't know that it really is a matter of starting with us on reissuing an RFP to basically ask for the same thing. That might be something that perhaps at a future, meeting to explore and have those conversations with some other providers on what are the barriers.
I think that's a big issue, their ability to hire and retain staff is still.
But are you ready to table the motion? Bertram, because we have another item that we have to finish today. To table the motion that was had a second. Were you willing to table it?
Sure.
Okay.
For future discussion.
Okay. And I'm sorry that we didn't get to some of the other things. Just to announce that at our November meeting, all our meetings are the second Tuesday of the month from 4 to 6. The next meeting, we plan to have a listen and learn on benefits and other things like SSI, SSDI, special needs trust, able account. So that'll be our listen and learn. It sounds like we're getting busy and need to do other things, which Bertra and LaVoice and Maimuna and I will try to figure out how to schedule all the things we want to get done. But we have one other very important thing to add to our agenda today. So Bertra, co-chair, would you like to take it?
So just a very few minutes and thanks for your time. Today is Tom's last meeting with us. And as you know, Tom Daly is sitting there copiously taking notes. Does an amazing job for us. Making sure we have an accurate record submitted timely. Tom, we were just discussing this and it's going to take about 3 of us to do what you do. But we really appreciate all that you do, your tireless commitment. We're going to miss you and hope you will enjoy dinner on us with all the free time you're going to have.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if anyone wants to add to the chat about Tom and thanks and any other comments, please do so in the chat. And I'm really sorry. Once again, we ran out of time. And thank you. Do you want to?
Okay.
We're good. That means meeting is adjourned.
I motion to adjourn.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
We are gonna, for the couple parents still in the room, we are gonna do an ice cream social for